bit offline and spoken about what we're going to chat about today. And I think it's a very exciting topic. We've got a lot of different questions from our community around how to leverage AI within the marketing function. We've had a couple of people on, and I'm very excited to go through this. Let's just start off with a bit about your background. I think you've got like a wealth of experience in marketing across some awesome, can't say countries, but companies, from Yammer to Asana, Rollworks, Carter, Groundspeed Analytics, and now Anrok. I think I probably missed a few off there, but I'd love to maybe let you introduce yourself and give the audience a little bit of a background as to who you are and what you actually do and what does Anrok do, and then we'll jump straight into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Alfie, for having me. I'm excited to be here. And yeah, I'm Devon Watts. I currently head up marketing at Anrok, which is a Series A B2B SaaS company that automates sales tax compliance. So sort of fintech, compliance tech area, and still pretty early stage, but growing very quickly. I actually started my career in the nonprofit sector doing global health and development work. So I did get to go to lots of different countries at that point in my career, and then moved into tech where I have been at a lot of different companies, including, like you mentioned, I ended up leading product marketing and content teams at Yammer, which was acquired by Microsoft. So I did a short stint at Big Tech Co. Moved over to Asana, so also sort of project management, collaboration space. And then Carta. So that was my entree into fintech and compliance tech with cap table management there. And then, as you said, more recently, a couple stints in ad tech and then insure tech, and now landed at Anrok. Here at Anrok, I lead a team of 4 marketers. We are mostly responsible for generating qualified pipeline for our sales team. So it's a sales-driven motion for us. And as a small team, we're always looking for ways to leverage new tools and technology to make us faster, better, more effective at what we do. So we've been playing around with a lot of different AI tools and use cases, and excited to share my experience today.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the community. I'd like to maybe just start before we kind of go into all of the different use cases and the ways you're interacting with AI and the different tools you use. Well, how's your team currently structured across those 4 people? Who does what, and how do you just think about sort of building that team?
Yeah, great question. The team is, yeah, so 3 people plus me today. There's a 4th joining soon. I'll tell you about that role as well. First, we have our content and creative master. So Hallie on my team is all things words, pictures, design. We can talk about that a bit later. We do not have a designer on the team, and we do not outsource design a lot. We get it done in-house without a real sort of trained graphic designer on the team. So that's one, content and creative, I think super critical, especially for B2B marketing companies. And then growth and demand gen. So our sort of more numbers person who works on all of our email campaigns, paid campaigns. So she manages our LinkedIn and Google paid programs, and all things kind of lead qualification, handoff to sales, et cetera. And then the third leg of the stool, of course, product marketing. So we've got a product marketer on the team as well who focuses on competitive messaging and differentiation. There are other players in our space, as there are in most spaces. Sales enablement content, some partner enablement stuff. We have an kind of go-to-market motion through accounting firms and tax advisory firms. So she does some of the content and enablement for that audience as well. And then the 4th person who is going to be joining shortly is a community and events coordinator. So this is kind of trying to tap into the more of the organic channels, having more of a intentional presence on LinkedIn and in other online communities where people are talking about SaaS, finance, accounting, and tax topics, and also plan and organize small events, dinners, happy hours, et cetera, to start building exec relationships and nurture some of the bigger customers we're trying to woo these days, as well as supporting our third-party event sponsorships. So we don't do a ton of that today, but where we buy a booth and show up on an expo floor, that person will help us execute on those things as well. So content, demand gen, product marketing, and now this sort of community and events role.
And I'm super jealous that you do all your design in-house because I suck at design, and so does my co-founder, and we definitely don't have the skills to bring that in-house. But are there any other things that you outsource or work with, like outside freelancers or agencies, to kind of bring that stuff without having to necessarily hire another person?
Yeah, so on the paid side, we do have some agency support. We actually, when we first started, we had an agency running LinkedIn and Google for us. We've since brought LinkedIn in-house, actually. Maddie, my growth demand gen marketer, is really skilled in LinkedIn, and we felt confident enough with all the scaling and experimentation we wanted to do to actually bring that in-house so we could kind of move a little bit faster. We do have someone, though, helping with Google. So no one on our team is like a deep SEM or Google Ads expert, and that is a whole wide world of intricacies and nuances around bidding philosophies and campaign structure and keyword expansion. So we do have some support there from a small agency. It's basically a one-person shop. So we've got a Slack channel with us, and it's kind of an extension of the team there on Google. That person also actually has been helping us think about channel expansion strategies. So how do we go beyond LinkedIn and Google and start to play around with Quora and Reddit and display ads to a certain extent. So we're actually just starting to get small experiments in market for different paid channels as well.
So how would you describe your kind of overall go-to-market? Whereas most of those leads coming in, do you have like a sales team that are also doing outbound? Do you mostly focus on inbound? Like how would you describe to someone who's ever, seen the inside of the go-to-market function? What does that look like?
Mm-hmm. It's largely inbound driven today. So we've done a pretty good job of creating an inbound engine that works really well, especially for the commercial segment of our business. So smaller companies looking for a sales tax solution for the first time. We have great content that we promote on LinkedIn, like where is your product taxable? And it's sort of an interactive tool where you can put in what type of product you sell and see the states and countries where that product is taxable. So they can get a little bit of an understanding of how big a problem this be for them, or how big a problem it's going to be when they start selling in all of those different places. We have, Sales Tax 101 webinar that's like one of our internal tax experts explaining kind of what's the deal with sales tax on software. What do you need to know? How do you get started with compliance? Some reports. The nice thing we have is a little bit of a competitive advantage in that this is a regulatory space that's changing all the time. So jurisdictions are constantly writing new laws about sales tax and what you have to collect sales tax on. So we can do quarterly and annual reports that say, hey, here's what's changed in sales tax in the last quarter or year, right? Virginia is considering taxing B2B software, but not B2C software, that kind of thing, right? Where we can kind of just summarize all the news that is related to software taxability and sales tax regulations and surface that to people as just kind of a value add, nice piece of content there, get some downloads, and then nurture those folks, obviously, to tell them more about our product, make it more obvious to them how big their problem is, create some urgency for them, and then push them towards that demo request part of the funnel. So yeah, lots of content promotion on LinkedIn, lots of also paid search is a very effective channel, organic and paid search. Google is a very effective channel for us because a lot of people don't know much about sales tax necessarily going in. And so they search, is software taxable, or is software taxable in Texas because they just closed a big deal in Texas and they don't know if they need to collect sales tax on that deal or something, right? And we can do a bunch of content work that I can talk about later, SEO, programmatic SEO stuff to try to capture that traffic, and also obviously the pay to play piece where we're just serving ads for that and capturing demo requests that way.
Yeah, that kind of top of the funnel awareness content is like super powerful to tap into when you've got such regular things that change as well to keep on top of. That seems awesome.
Yeah.
So you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say the other sort of pipeline drivers for us are the partners. So I mentioned accounting firms and tax advisors. A lot of companies will turn to their professional services advisory firm to ask them about this problem. So we kind of try to go reach those folks and say, hey, if you have clients who are software or digital goods companies, Anrok, we focus specifically on software and digital goods. Send them our way. They can use our tool. It'll make your life easier as their accountant or tax partner. So partners kind of send us referrals as well. And then we do have a sales outbound motion as well, but it's just sort of less mature at this point. We've been spending more time and energy building the marketing motion so far.
Do you have a dedicated person that manages your partner function?
Yeah, we have one partnerships person today trying to grow that team as well.
Yeah, I think some of my time at Spendesk, it was also, in fintech doing more corporate
Hmm.
card spend management stuff. We had
Hmm.
a partnerships team, and it was actually really interesting. The kind of dynamic of the partnerships channels for accountants is kind of difficult because instead of having like one big partner that kind of brings all of your, maybe leads that you kind of have to manage, there's potentially thousands of different accounting firms, and some maybe like one or two CPAs with, a handful of clients, and others with maybe thousands. And so
Yep.
it's actually very similar with the accounting industry anyway. It's almost very similar to just having like an outbound sales team because you have to manage so many relationships, which
Yeah,
is always
definitely.
a challenging one from like a marketing perspective of like managing those.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's the big four, which obviously is kind of, a target for us.
Yeah.
Um, in the kind of long term, but there's a huge long tail, like you said, of smaller accounting firms. And a lot of smaller software companies don't go with the big four until they're bigger and later stage and have the budget for that kind of thing. So they're working with, Bennett Thrasher, Cruise Consulting, all these kind of, yeah, not small, but, mid-sized accounting firms serving customers that we want to get in front of. So it's a really effective motion for us. It works really well. So, yeah.
So you have a super lean team. Um, Most of your pipeline and revenue generation is also coming from the lean team and the activities that you do. So let's talk about some of the different workflows where you have started to integrate AI.
Mhm.
We discussed a few different topics. I don't know which one you'd like to maybe start with, but I think we could kind of go from any one of these.
Yeah. I mean, maybe a good place to start is just the chatbots, because I think when a lot of people think about AI these days, they think of ChatGPT, or they think of these, AI assistants and, the bots we can chat with now to kind of ask questions, get information, etc. So we've played around a lot with Claude and ChatGPT on our team. I think there's a couple of things I found that those are really good for, and a couple of things I found that they're not so good for yet. So I'll share those. I think one thing is, kind of a brainstorming buddy. When you're brainstorming, there's this phrase, there's no bad ideas, right? And so like, why not ask AI? If there's no such thing as a bad idea, then like, sure, the AI might not have the greatest idea, but if you are just like, I want something to start with, I want to like not be staring at a blank piece of paper and thinking from zero, it's a great way to get from zero to one. A tactical example is we launched a new Substack newsletter recently, and we were trying to think of a name for it. So, if you're ever like doing a naming process or something like that, it can be fun just to get some ideas from ChatGPT, right? Like prompt it with, here's the audience for this publication, here's the kinds of things we're going to be writing about. We wanted an accounting pun, of course. So, asking ChatGPT to come up with finance and accounting puns is always fun, if not also fruitful in terms of giving you either some good ideas or maybe even just some bad ideas that then make you think of the good idea or whatever it might be. Similarly, I think, generating a first draft of a pretty simple piece of content, maybe an event invitation email or content distribution, right? You've got the piece of content, you want just like the email copy or the social copy or something like that. Again, it might not nail your brand tone and voice. You're probably going to want to edit or rewrite it to a certain extent, but at least you're not just starting from a blank piece of paper, which I think is often every writer or content creator's kind of worst moment, is like before you've even drafted anything, right? I find at least it's much easier to respond to things and um, edit them and make them better than it is to just create completely from scratch. So I have found that really helpful. If I'm just like, oof, I need to write this email or something, let me just run it through and get a quick first draft and go from there.
Which do
So
you find the difference? Do you have a preference between Claude and ChatGPT? In terms of, well, for many reasons, but like one in particular you mentioned around like the tone of voice. It's hard to get like your brand voice out of the box, right?
yeah,
Is there like a particular one? Do you see the difference in the tonality in which it writes content for you, just kind of out of the box with less instruction?
that's a good question. I don't think I've noticed a big difference. I will say I've played around a little bit with how to prompt both of them. And I think one of the keys is like tell them to imagine that they are somebody in a certain scenario. You can even do things like imagine you are like top 1% salesperson at a SaaS company or something, right? And it
Mm.
somehow kind of makes a difference if you tell it to think of itself as like a top tier XYZ instead of just an XYZ. And so, yeah, imagine imagine yourself in this scenario, or imagine you are this kind of person, I think is really helpful to get them to nail that tone, right? To not maybe make it too casual if you tell them that they're a top executive at a leading something. So yeah, but I don't know. I don't think I've noticed particularly differences between Claude and ChatGPT that are, noticeable enough for me to
Yeah.
have a perspective on.
I've played around with a few different like scenarios and use cases. I always find that out of the box ChatGPT, like GPT-4, it seems to be better, but the definitely 3.5, it just has this kind of like, it's a bit pompous and like it's like it's eaten a thesaurus and is
Yeah.
over eloquent. And I think like the easiest way I've managed to get it to kind of tone it down is just say speak at a reading level of 6 to 7 years
Yep.
old.
Yep.
Um, and it's actually, I mean, and this is interesting from the context of, you're dealing with tax. I think the IRS website and the similar one is in the UK. The reading level that they actually write for is for 4 years old. And there's a
Yeah.
reason, because they want it to be
Yep.
so easy for people to pay their tax. And we should take the same thing in when writing content. It just make it easier. And so reading at level age is one, and then trying to
Yep.
like adapt the tone of voice. But I found that Claude has a bit more of like a natural
Mm-hmm.
tonality where it's not, you don't have to instruct it as much to kind of bring it down
Mm-hmm.
to something which is a bit more casual. But on
Mm-hmm.
the flip side, if you're doing more sort of complex or chain of thought tasks where you need some a more powerful model, GPT-4 seems to win
Yeah.
over for me.
Yeah, I actually just upgraded to GPT-4, so I haven't spent as much time in yet. And I actually tend to open up Claude when I'm drafting stuff. So I actually think I just use Claude more for that use
Yeah.
case. So maybe I haven't noticed the difference quite as much. But yeah, I'm excited for GPT-4. One of the things I want to try, and this is a totally different AI use case, but is actually like modeling and forecasting with GPT-4 and uploading a spreadsheet with our historical, KPIs and conversion rates, and ask it to kind of forecast what performance would look like in different scenarios. If we were able to increase web traffic conversion by 6% this quarter, what would that do to marketing source qualified pipeline? Those
Mm.
kinds of things where I can build those models in a spreadsheet, but frankly, I'm not particularly good at it. And I would love for AI to help me with those things, help me get faster answers to those kinds of questions.
So we were discussing some of the downsides offline to the chats, and you had
Mhm.
you used a kind of an alternative. I'd love to get your
Yeah.
take on that. One thing in particular, the context of writing content to write good quality content. There's obviously this element of you want to maybe link to relevant sources. You want to have good research. If you're ranking for a keyword for something, you also want to maybe understand like what are other posts that are ranking in the SERP, what kind of data or referencing are they referring to or outlinking to, and do you need to
Yeah.
bring something similar? Um, how do you kind of do that within the context of chat, and maybe talk to some of the downsides of what you've seen so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think it's good for the first draft of an event invitation. I do not think it's good for research-based content, or just generally like getting facts right. So an example is I asked it once I gave it a list of companies and I said, which of these companies is funded by, I can't even remember, Iconic or something, right? Some venture capital firm. And I thought, this should be easy for the bot to go, reference information on the internet, come back to me and tell me based on Iconic's website or these companies' websites, which of them was funded by Iconic. And it came back with a very confident and very wrong hallucination of an answer. And I was just surprised. And I think what I found since then is, my husband shared this apparently is like a AI lore that ChatGPT cannot tell you how many B's are in the word blueberry. So, examples like that, like where it's just basic fact, you can get ChatGPT to do it, but you have to like tell it to go step by step and like look at every character in the word and then count how many times it sees a character that's a B, and then eventually it'll get it right. But at first pass, it answers confidently incorrectly. What I've been starting to use is Perplexity, which is sort of this new age search engine, which is actually using AI to summarize search results. So it's a great way to get an answer to something in the same way you would want to ask ChatGPT or Claude for the answer, but
Mm.
with the actual sources there as well. So Perplexity takes what it finds on the internet, it summarizes it in kind of a paragraph for you as the more or less the search result or the response to your query or your prompt, but it also shows you where it pulled those insights from. So one thing I've used it for is competitive research. I will ask it, what are, the worst things that people say about our competitor, or the worst thing people say about our competitor's customer service or something, right? And it will
Mm.
summarize that for me in a nice little block of text that's kind of like, here's the most frequent things that people mention when talking about that competitor or that competitor's customer service. But it will also show me that, look, this came from G2, this came from Trust Radius. It actually pulls up the links to those resources in the same way that Google search results would. So it's kind of a combination of like the answer that the chatbot would give you plus the actual search results that Google would give you. So you can really validate the information that's in there in a way that's very important, obviously, for anything that is going to be fact or research based.
Yeah, I've spoken to people who have like, let's say you're trying to create a brand voice based off of like your website homepage or something like this. And so you say, summarize to me, what does Anrok do? And that's like the prompt. And maybe you
Mm-hmm.
even add a link in, let's say in ChatGPT in particular,
Mm-hmm.
and you add a link. Some people might incorrectly think that that's actually going to click on the link, take that page and like summarize it with AI. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not actually doing that,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part. It's kind of predicting what, probabilistically based on like the corpus of information, what it understands Anrok to do. There is
Mm-hmm.
I think this is maybe just the pro feature of ChatGPT, where it actually allows you to search with Bing. And so there are things where like you say, what should I do in Paris for the weekend, and it will go to search Bing and then maybe pull in like the top X number of links. And so there
Mm-hmm.
is some kind of searching with the internet capability. And I think this is also like, where they have to try and compete really with Perplexity, because
Mm-hmm.
it's such a better way of doing it. But there are still kind of issues of that. I've tried to use it regularly. So one use case I use ChatGPT for is I have a GPT where I upload a transcript of a call recording that I've had with someone, and then I want to be able to get it into like a predefined note. And as part of that note, I also wanted to have it give a LinkedIn URL, and then they go and summarize what they do, because there's obviously a lot of information that you might not capture on just like a conversation that is outside. And I've noticed that they used to actually go in with search with Bing, summarize that information. They've stopped doing it now. And my
Mm-hmm.
guess is actually they are very sensitive towards trying to include like personal information, and so they are
Mm-hmm.
not trying to do that. And so there's like tools like Perplexity is actually really interesting, because it's that information, it's first gathering real stuff and then summarizing it, rather than saying, let's take the whole corpus of the internet and then
Yep.
probabilistically guess, which is a game changer. So I,
Yep.
I feel like I need to learn how to use Perplexity to its full extent. And I've definitely started to dabble in it, but I love the format that it brings it in.
Yep. Yeah, same. I think marketers are also starting to talk about how do you as a marketer then get your brand and content to show up in things like Perplexity instead of on Google. It's a whole new kind of SEO game now too, of like we've got to figure out the Google algorithms, but also these other tools that folks are using to get more sort of intelligent search.
So earlier you touched a little bit on programmatic SEO. I think this is
Mm-hmm.
quite an interesting topic now. Do you want to just maybe summarize what is programmatic SEO, and then let's dive into how you started kind of thinking about it from a content creation perspective, and the workflows you've been using.
Yeah. I would summarize programmatic SEO as basically if you have a category of keywords where there's like one slight difference in each one. So it's commonly used in with companies that go to market locally. So if you are selling doggy daycare services in 12 different markets, you want a landing page for each of those markets that's like doggy daycare in Ann Arbor, Michigan, doggy daycare in San Francisco, California, that's optimized for the localized search term. This is not really what we're doing, but that's a good example of it, right? Zapier is another great example. They sort of invented programmatic SEO because they wanted a page for every potential integration that you could ever build a Zap with. And that's like a million different tools that you could build a Zapier integration with. So they wanted, you know, integrating Asana to Airtable or something, right? And integrating Asana to Jira or something, right? Like all these different potential integrations. They wanted to create landing pages where if anyone searched for that, they would end up on a Zapier landing page and see that Zapier could do that. So in all these cases, you basically want to create a bunch of pages that are almost exactly the same, but optimized for a slightly different keyword or slightly different sort of addition to the keyword. For us, the use case is sales tax regulations. Where is your product taxable? Taxability by state and country, basically. So is software taxable in Texas was an example I gave you of like an inbound search query that we want to capture. So we have a page now about software taxability in Texas, in California, in Maine, in Massachusetts, in every state and territory of the United States. And we just launched also the VAT index, which is VAT is value added tax. It's what the rest of the world calls sales tax. You know that.
Yeah.
So we did the VAT index as well for global. So what are the VAT rates in Ireland, in Germany, et cetera, et cetera. So that if anyone Googles, you know, software VAT in Ireland, they'll end up on our site on a page that tells them exactly what they want to know, which is, you know, is it taxable? What is the tax rate? What do I need to do to get compliant? And also sort of, you know, makes it clear how complicated this problem is and drives them into our funnel, hopefully as a demo request. So this is, you know, used to be really annoying and hard because you basically would have to go and create each of those pages kind of individually. Now there's a lot of tools, AI or not, frankly, just kind of automation behind the scenes tools, Zapier being one of them, actually, that can help you just sort of create all these pages in a sort of systematic and programmatic way, and then push them live to your website, also in a programmatic way, and update them sort of programmatically as opposed to one by one. That's what programmatic SEO is. What we've done is we used a combination of Airtable for the tax data, because we are actually showing tax rates on each of these pages, and we have a database for those tax rates that we keep up to date constantly, and we need it to be like syncing to the website so that the information we're putting out there is accurate. We used Whale Sync actually to sync Airtable to Webflow. Webflow collections is like the way to make all these pages and then have the data kind of feed into them to make them each unique. You have essentially a variable on or set of variables on each page, right, that then pulls the data into that page depending on what you want to show. And then for us, we also did with these types of things, you actually don't want too much repetitive or duplicative content on the internet. The SEO algorithms can kind of ding you for that. So one of the use cases for generative content writing, I think for us, was write the same thing in a bunch of slightly different ways. So like the intro paragraph about, you know, software taxability, whatever, should be more or less, it needs to mean the same thing on each of these pages, but we'd like for it to read a little bit differently. This is also a case where someone might visit a bunch of these pages because they're trying to understand where software is taxable in a lot of different places, right? So it's not actually one where they would necessarily just come to one page and then leave. So we asked, I think we used Byword for the US sales tax and then copy.ai for the VAT one, but just because they each gave us kind of better results in each of those instances, but to just generate some of the pros on each of those pages, not the facts, not the sales tax information or the data. We controlled that through this database that's synced through Airtable, but just the kind of sentences around that. We were able to, you know, create 52 pages, I think, in like a couple of weeks through kind of that data syncing and like using collections and stuff like that to sort of just create all the pages all at once, essentially. And then also with the generative AI writing, it just took us a lot less time to actually have all the words to put out on those pages.
That's awesome. So if I was to summarize that, you know, the programmatic SEO It's effectively, a long tail keyword. There may not be like a ton of traffic on any particular one, but there's just a lot more of these keywords that you want to be able to rank for. The intensity or quality of each page isn't necessarily as high as like a thought leadership piece.
Hmm.
But nonetheless, if you're having to write a page for hundreds of pages, it's going to take time. So being able to speed up that process in any way, shape, or form is going to be helpful. You've got particular tools for grabbing the information from the internet about what are the tax rates for each one. And this is how you make those pages unique. And then you're using other AI tools like Byword and Copy to actually help create the pros around that so that you're not creating duplicative content. And the point being there is Google might deem that as just, spamming the internet with,
Hmm.
content for trying to, optimize the SERP. Super interesting.
One
And
thing I
that's
will
scalable.
say, just slight clarification, the tax data and information we don't pull from the internet, and we don't have like AI help us figure that
Okay,
out.
that's like
That's from
manual.
our internal subject matter experts. Yeah, you kind of have to like follow the uh the like laws in every state and city, and like know what's happening at these local jurisdiction levels. It's actually it's one of the reasons this is such a unique opportunity for us, is not great data out there on the internet of where
Interesting.
specifically SaaS and digital goods are taxable. So it's sort of it was a gap we could fill in the market, frankly, from kind of an information and content perspective. But yeah, we definitely do the actual tax rates and taxability information manually because it is so important to get that right.
Yeah.
And then the sort of production and publication is very much like automated and AI enabled.
Is that difficult because the information you're trying to search for is like hidden away in a PDF somewhere, or there's not
Mm-hmm.
like a standardized, date government database where this information is easily accessible? Like what makes that
Yeah.
tricky for you to be able to find?
Well, luckily, we, as the marketing team, don't really have to find it because our internal tax team already has to find it in order for our tool to work correctly, right? We have to have
Okay.
that information up to date in our product in order for our product to look at every transaction our customer imports and tell whether it's taxable and at what tax rate and stuff like that, right? So we have a whole team internally that's dedicated to knowing the
Yeah.
laws and staying up to date with the laws so that we are always like ready to help our customers with compliance for the latest and greatest regulations that just got changed. So we as marketing go to our tax team every like month or quarter and say, hey, what's going on in the world of tax? Like tell us everything. We try to translate it to the like fourth grade reading level, right? Because these are tax lawyers and people who
Mm.
were consultants at Deloitte for years, and um they talk in a lot of jargon, which is great and wonderful for them, but we do try to simplify things a little bit. It's interesting when you mentioned that, actually. I was thinking, uh, you get a lot of advice in marketing actually to write to a pretty low grade level, reading level. And I think sometimes people think that's really bad because it's like insulting the intelligence of your audience. But the way I kind of justify it, or I don't know, like embrace it, is just, yeah, they're really smart people, but they're really busy and they do
Yeah.
not want to have to sit there and like think through the sentence they just read. Sure, they could, they would get it eventually. I'm not saying they couldn't, but like, let's make it dead simple for them to just understand quickly. And that's what, like, that fourth grade reading level is like a great way to just make it really simple to get the information you need quickly.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I don't want to have to think about what I'm supposed to be understanding. I just want to understand it straight
Yep.
away. Okay, so we've talking about like creating content, programmatic SEO. We're talking about the pros and cons of the chat. Where else are you starting to integrate AI into your processes? What are some of the workflows that you found interesting? What are the out of
Yep.
those, for example, those four positions in the team at the moment that you've discussed? Where do
Yep.
they kind of like layer into there? And maybe where also some places that you haven't necessarily started to do it yet, but you're kind of
Yep.
thinking this could actually be really interesting if we could figure out how to do that.
Totally. So content creation goes beyond the written word as well, also, right? And big space right now is like generative AI, image and video creation. We're not doing a ton of that yet. What we are
Mm.
doing is we're using Descript, AI powered video editing. So when we do conversations like this one, when we have two people talking to one another, whether it's a webinar or like a little podcast interview or something, we record with um, oh, why am I blanking on the name of this? I'll come back to that. And then we edit with Descript. They like pull out all of the pauses and nuances. It's Riverside that we record with.
Riverside, yeah.
So we record
Love
with Riverside.
Riverside.
We edit with Descript. It pulls the transcript. I remember when you used to record an interview with a customer or someone, you'd send the transcript off to some offshore, or you'd send the recording off to some offshore transcript team and get it back in 24 hours or something. But it's so nice to just literally have it instantaneous there. It'll create the little captions at the bottom, just kind of real AI magic moments there with Descript, I think. Images, though, we're not quite there yet. I mentioned we do all our design in-house. We're really just pretty simple things in Figma and then using Jitter on top of that, which is not AI, but it's kind of automagic motion graphics. So if you want to kind of swoop the words on and off the screen or do some basic kind of icon animation or something like that, you can make little animated ad assets without, hiring a fancy design firm or having an actual like video creation thing happen. The other one, I think, people are talking about using Midjourney for like blog post images or something. I do think this is like has been a pain point for me as a marketer. Kind of, you're putting a lot of content out, everything needs some kind of image. You're like, do we just pull from stock photography? Everyone's doing that. Or do we have, a
Mm.
full-time designer who can do like custom illustrations or whatever? So I think, Midjourney could be a good solution for that. I think for us, we're just a little, I don't know, maybe to brand perfectionists, or I think we would spend a lot of time trying to prompt Midjourney to give us something that felt right and on brand. I think consistency is also hard to get.
Mm.
So if you're looking to have, just every time you have a blog post that you need an image for, pop over to Midjourney and ask it to create one, you might end up with some pretty different looking stuff. So yeah, I think, probably a lot of potential there in the future. We're not quite there yet, at least with just creating images that we use for marketing materials from AI.
Yeah, I think I've seen that definitely this similar the inability, I think with image and video creation, the way the models kind of work, if you were to type in exactly the same prompt twice, you're still going to get a pretty different image, and it's
Mhm.
really hard to actually control something. When you think about like traditional tools, whether you're using Figma or Adobe or whatever the tool is to kind of manage imagery, you tend to think of like, let's start with a layer, let's start with a color, then add an image, then we add this and add the text, and there's a kind of these layers. There's a hell of a lot of control that you can have.
Yeah.
And from like a marketing perspective, brand colors, what's the text and the font that we want? These are all things that you really need to be able to control. And until we get to that point, I think imagery is going to be really difficult, other than just low value items where the image, I think you gave the example with the blog image or like something like that.
Mhm.
It's kind of like low value. Maybe it doesn't have to be on brand. I've seen people create, they have like, animals branded across their website. So they just create, hey, let's create a cat jumping off of this. And no, that works
Mhm.
fine, because it's not really branded. But there
Yeah.
is, I don't know if you saw, did you see recently that OpenAI launched Sora, the video
Yeah.
generation? Have you
Mhm.
seen some of the demos from them?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're incredible.
Yeah.
They're only like 60 seconds, but when you think of a video is just a series of still images stitched together. And so
Mhm.
in order to create a video, I'm deducting that you must be able to control it enough to create a similar enough image, but repeated over, X number of frames per second.
Mhm.
And so if we've done that on the video side with this breakthrough, which I think people really weren't anticipating happening so quickly, maybe the image stuff is actually, we're getting pretty close to being able to control it from like a marketing perspective. And if we can put in brand guidelines, brand colors, and control things like font, and those are probably some of like the main two actually that we really need to
Yeah.
be able to do. It
Yep.
could be, yeah, it could be incredible.
Yep.
I have not seen people using it super systematically across marketing. In B2C, I've seen it a lot more, but in B2B,
Yeah.
a lot less.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you
Um,
think? What do you think about the uh, using voice. So you talked about Descript, and we're actually
Hmm.
taking like video and then creating text and editing from here. One of the features in Descript is you can actually record your voice for 30 seconds, and then it will
Yep.
use it to dub other words. So if you say,
Yeah.
"Oh, I said 8 billion and I meant to say 8 million," you can change the text to 8 million, and then it will actually do it in your voice, which I think is like incredible. Um,
Yeah.
that extrapolate that out, you could write a whole transcript for a podcast in
Yep.
a particular voice. If you look at companies like 11 Labs, they have really amazing like voice models, and they're just getting better. How do you
Yep.
think about that kind of content?
Yeah, we played around with that actually for we had to put together a quick video for an event we were sponsoring. We were kind of like unsure, frankly, how many eyeballs the video would get because it was just for like it was going to be placed in our virtual booth, but it was an in-person event, and we were like, are people actually going to go to the virtual booths like for this event? So we're kind of like, oof, we have to do this thing, and it's kind of a big lift, to produce like a decently polished, it was like a 2-minute video or maybe a 1-minute video. And so we wrote a script, we did a screen recording. It was sort of, yeah, did it hacky way with like slides and a little bit of product recording, I think. And then wrote a script and had, I think it was Descript, read voice the whole thing, basically. We didn't end up using it, that voiceover, because it was just still a little bit too robotic. And
Mm,
interestingly, the brand of the company that was hosting the event, this is one of our partners, like it just said their name wrong, like it pronounced it slightly
mm,
incorrectly or like oddly, and so we were like, we can't ship this where it says the name of this big company that whose event this is, like says it kind of wrong. So there's funny little things like that where, yeah, I think we're like so close, we're kind of in this, uncanny valley, if you will, of like, oh, it's like almost there. I almost thought that it was a real person, and then they said this one thing and I was like, oh no, that's definitely a robot and everyone will know.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting with these ones where there's like such a high like potential negative impact of getting something wrong.
Yeah.
The way I see teams implementing it is on a much more controlled or compartmentalized use case. So with
Yeah.
the voiceover things. Sorry, you're going to say something there.
No, go ahead.
With the voiceover as like an example, instead of trying to, make like an hour-long podcast, which I think we will be able to get to and have it in, you probably might not even be able to tell the difference between like the AI and a real person. But what I have seen, especially on like the outbound sales side, there was
Hmm.
years ago when I was doing outbound sales at Spendesk, there was a company called Lemlist, and they do like sales kind of automation cadences, this kind of stuff. And they
Hmm.
released a product which I think got them really popular, which was like little GIFs that you could overlay basically like a text. You could put it as a variable input and it say, we used to like hold up whiteboards on like a GIF and be like, hey, Anrok, like, come talk to us about spend management. And they'd be like,
Uh-huh.
oh, wow, it's personalized. You've taken the effort to write this thing. And back in the day, I
Yep.
actually used to write them. And then
Right.
this kind of GIF like tool came out and you could just put the variable in and it would create it. And it's like, wow, well, that's just super scalable. And then
Yep.
obviously everyone started doing it. And then it became like, oh, this is clearly not like a thing. And
Yeah.
now I've started seeing, creative people are doing like playing a guitar song and making a song about someone and then sending that, and it's like, wow, okay,
Yep.
the effort level that someone went in to do that deserves a reply. But now with these models you can do very similar things where it's like
Yeah.
record a single video, be like, hey, insert first name, saw like relevant piece of information, reaching out because of
Hmm.
XYZ. And so there's just two little snippets. And if you can put them in variables and you have a model that can fill that up in your voice, and it's just a
Yep.
word or like a little snippet, that's actually
Yeah.
really low kind of risk actually.
Yep.
Because I mean an
Hmm.
SDR probably mispronounce people's name anyway when they're doing cold
Yep.
emails. So yeah, I don't know like how you would think of that, but I can see that especially in like marketing, onboarding,
Yeah.
self-activation. How do you pull in information now from the people signing up to your website and then giving you fully
Yep.
customized and personalized information and creating that wow experience?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's the same. And when you think about the risk of it, it's the same risk as we've been using tokens in marketing email forever, right? When we send an email from HubSpot, it says hi name. And of course, there's some risk that the first name that's in there will be null or that it will, like so it's we've been playing this game and taking these types of risks for a while. It feels a little bit different, I think, with this, but it's not really at the end of the day. Um, Yeah, no, I love that idea for, yeah, cold call scripts, or,
Yeah.
when cold calls, you're leaving voicemails most of the time anyway. Have the, talk about robo dial, like don't even need a human to leave the voicemail. And yeah, I think, using it to insert specific, yeah, words or phrases to update content, again, like an old podcast. And I said at the beginning of this company, we're a Series A B2B SaaS company. We won't be a Series A B2B SaaS company forever. If you want to repurpose this content, go in there and make me say Series B.
Yeah.
Once we're past that. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. The other use case I could think of, and again, going back to how my team is structured and what we do a decent amount of internal comms and kind of training too. So on product marketing with like feature training or competitive whatever, doing videos with voiceover where you don't have to actually have someone sit there and do the whole voiceover and record it and edit it and go back and edit out their ums and ahs and pauses. I think it could be for people who are doing that at scale, I think could be really
Mm.
a game changer for just like internal trainings and things like that too. Like it just makes, again, the content
Huge.
creation process so much faster. And if the polish doesn't matter quite as much, or it's internal purposes only, I think that could be a really good use case as well.
Super interesting. Because honestly, like just recording something, and even if there's no video, just saying it right and not messing up actually can
Hmm.
take 5, 10+ attempts. And it's not
Hmm.
complicated. It's just, but type a script, get the AI to do it, and then boom, it's done.
Yep.
It's super exciting.
Yep.
Okay, so we come to the end. I don't know if there's any other questions from people in the audience, so feel free to put something in the chat if you'd like to ask anything here. But is there anything else that we haven't spoken about that you would have liked to, or anything else that you'd like to add? Otherwise, please let everybody know where they can find you, and plug anything if you've got anything interesting coming up that you want the audience to know about.
Love it. The one thing we talked about before this that I will put, I'll add in as a final thought is on content creation when it comes to like thought leadership or anything with a very distinct or unique point of view. Don't rely on AI to have a distinct or unique point of view for you. So if you want help with that kind of content from generative AI, I would just say, have the content brief written, have your unique point of view and what you want to say and kind of your proof points, and then have it help you just create some prose around that and draft kind of, um, the bulk of the words, but not the concept. I think it's very important as marketers, especially on kind of top of funnel thought leadership stuff, to really have something unique to say and not just be regurgitating other information that is out there on the internet. So if you start from just AI, it's going to go find other information on the internet and then regurgitate it, and that's sort of not at all what you want to be doing with um, unique point of view type content. So that's my final thought on using the bots for content generation. Find me on LinkedIn. Go visit anrok.com. Check out our new Substack. It's called Journal Entries, which is an accounting pun. And we just launched our sort of quasi podcast series on there called Call a Controller. So you can see how we pull together clips and edit videos with the Descript magic I talked about. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining, Devon. It was a real pleasure speaking with you. Super excited to see how your team evolves and incorporates this as the technology catches up with our needs. But yeah, thank you very much. Let's definitely do this again. And anybody else, if you've got any questions, please feel free to reply back after this. This is recorded, so we will send this out to the community as well. And have a great one. Enjoy the rest of your week. And thank you very much, Devon.
Thanks so much, Alfie. It's been fun.
Yeah. Bye bye.